Assalamu alaikum. So, in this video, I wanted to talk about the Halaat or Iraab of Arabic nouns. Okay, these both are basically used interchangeably, but there can be a difference among them. So, you can basically translate it as conditions or moods. So, this Halaat is plural, its singular is hal. So, in Arabic, the nouns have specific conditions or moods, you can say, upon which they are in. Okay, so these conditions basically represents their role in a sentence. That is the role of a noun. Okay, so we can take our own very examples of humans, like you might be happy sometimes, or you might be angry sometimes, or you might be sad sometimes. Okay, so each of these conditions or each of the moods upon which you are in are basically represented by certain signs, you can say. For example, if you are happy, you might be smiling, you might be cheering. Okay, you might be laughing. And while when you are angry, you might be screaming, you might be shouting, you might be throwing stuff here and there. Okay, and likewise when you are sad, you might be crying, or you don't want to talk to anybody. Okay, you might be depressed. So basically these conditions are represented by few signs, you can say. Okay, like being angry is represented by you shouting, screaming and throwing stuff. You being happy basically is represented by you smiling, laughing, cheering. And you being sad basically is represented by you doing nothing or even crying. So similarly, in Arabic, the nouns have conditions or modes upon which they are in. So the conditions of Arabic nouns are marfu, majroor and mansub. I hope you are able to recognize my handwriting, because I don't claim to have the best handwriting in the world. So anyways, so each of these hal is basically represented by a sign. Okay, if a word is marfu, then it will end with dhamma. So if you are writing an exam and they ask you what is marfu, the basic answer will be alladhi yantahi with dhammati, the one which ends with dhamma. But if they give you plural of marfu, that is marfu'at, then you will use the feminine form of yantahi, that is tantahi. So the word that ends with dhamma is marfu, and as for majroor, a word that ends with kasra is basically majroor, and a word that ends with fatha is basically mansub. Okay, so here you can see the example. Hadal mudarrisu jadidun. This teacher is new. So you can see that the word al mudarrisu has ended with dhamma. So it is marfu. And here you can see Hada Kitabul Mudarrisi. This is a book of teacher. So here you can see the same word al mudarris has ended with kasra. Okay, because it is majroor. Marfu is a word that ends with dhamma. Majroor is a word that ends with kasra. Now here the same word al mudarris, sa'altul mudarrisa, which means I asked the teacher. Okay, so here the same word al mudarris has ended with fatha because it is mansub. So again, a word that ends with dhamma is called marfu, a word that ends with kasra is called majroor, and a word that ends with fatha is called mansub. So if you are writing an exam, let's say CBSE or ICSE or IGC, whatever you are writing, if they ask you ma hiyal marfu'at with a plural, then you will say allati tantahi bil dhammati, allati tantahi bil kasrati, and allati tantahi bil fathati. So you might be asking, what is the purpose of all this? The purpose of all this is to basically know the role the word is playing in a sentence. For example, here in this hadal mudarrisu jadidun, the word mudarris is a subject. Okay, and here in this case hada kitabul mudarrisi, the word mudarris is basically a possessor of a thing. And here in this case sa'altul mudarrisa, the word al mudarris is an object. Okay, so each of these words have a role which they are playing in a sentence. So this is basically known through majroor, marfu, majroor, mansub. So are these signs absolute for each and every single noun of Arabic? The answer is no. These are basically general signs. Okay, so a word ending with dhamma is a general sign of it being marfu, and a word ending with kasra is a general sign of it being majroor, and a word ending with fatha is a general sign of it being mansub. But there are certain words which have different signs, and there are certain words which doesn't have any signs. Okay, they are called mabni. They are basically unchangeable. You can say you cannot change them at all, but they will still be marfu, majroor, mansub. So you might say, how do you know it? Well, let's take a worldly example. If I ask you what are the signs of COVID, then you might basically say high fever, okay, severe coughing, or absence of taste or smell. Okay, these are the general signs. But some people don't. But some people don't have these signs. They have different signs. Some people don't have any signs. You might have heard about asymptomatic patients. Okay, but they still have COVID. So how do you know they have coronavirus? You test them. Okay, you test them. If the report comes positive, then you can infer that they are having coronavirus. So here, in those words, we will also see the context of the sentence, and we will see what is before it and after what is after it. But there are few words. If you are a learner of grammar, then you will learn it very quickly. But in general, the demonstrative pronouns are basically mabni, they don't change at all. And similarly, pronouns or relative pronoun, they don't also change. Okay, for example, this haga, this doesn't change at all. Okay, even if it is marfu, it will remain haga, and if it is majrur, then you will state it will remain haga, and if it is mansub, and if it is mansub, then it will still remain haga. So these are basically, you can say, exception, or there are very few words which you can basically memorize. Okay, but the original or general sign is dhamma, kasra, fatha. But for other words like sound plurals or duals or ghair munsarif words, the signs are different, which inshallah I will create a separate video for it. So I hope this might have helped. So a general sign of marfu is dhamma, a general sign of majrur is kasra, and a general sign of mansub is fatha. So, assalamu alaikum.